Oh my God.
I hate to be the one to have to tell you this, but you've been lied to. Have you ever arrived at a new mountain and stared at one of those lovely trail maps, decided on a beautiful blue run to embark on with the love of your life, taken her down it, to then find out that it was more like a black run and she ended up very pissed at you and not so happy at the après?
Oh my God. Thoughts on that one?
So how the heck does a blue square at one resort feel so different than a blue square at another resort? Well, let me tell you, you're not crazy. After years of making poor guiding decisions at new resorts based off the guise of the trail maps, I finally decided to investigate why the heck the trail ratings feel so different from one ski resort to another and expose the truth behind those little symbols that decide whether your run on your ski vacation with your wife is chill or divorce waiting to happen. So I visited almost every ski resort in North America, and they all seem to use the same basic trail rating system that you're all probably very familiar with. You got green circles for beginners, blue squares for intermediate, black diamond means advanced, double black diamonds for expert, and triple black unmarked or EX extreme terrain for the craziest terrain on the mountain. It all seems pretty self-explanatory at face value, but I'm sorry to confirm you've been lied to. Now, before we expose this redundant rating system, let's take a little trip back to the 1960s to understand how this all started. It all had to do with Disney. Yep, you heard me right. Lion King, Little Mermaid, Disney. The year is 1961. Walt Disney Corporation was planning on designing a ski resort, but when Walt Disney passed away, a greedy financier, Rob James, canceled the proposed bill following his death and started his own ski company called Vail. Okay, I'm playing you. I'm lying about that fact. I just put Adventure Rob and James's names together. So here's the actual truth now. Believe it or not, Walt Disney was actually a really, really big fan of skiing. So much so that he even invested a lot of money to help develop Sugar Bowl Resort. One of the mountains there is named after him. I think it's called Mount Disney. So he was a really, really big fan of skiing. Mr. Disney, like any wildly wealthy ski enthusiast, either was going to start a brewery or start his own ski mountain. And of course, he chose to start his own ski mountain. But this wasn't a pipe dream, you know. Walt Disney was a man who knew how to make things happen, and the Walt Disney Company Corporation got permits and was actually putting plans together to design the Mineral King Ski Resort in Mineral King Valley and the Sequoia National Forest in California. The plans for this resort were honestly pretty awesome, with 27 lifts, 10 on-mountain dining areas, and in this day and age, it'd actually be a super competitive and a pretty damn large resort compared to some of the other big resorts we see today. Of course, like the vast majority of ski resorts throughout history, everything fell through due to access road issues, environmental permits, and various lawsuits. But one thing did survive, and that was the ski trail rating system, also known as the Disney system. When designing the Mineral King Resort, Disney realized there was no cohesive system to help visitors identify the right ski run for their ability levels. He deeply understood human psychology and knew that would play a role in what runs people would choose to ski. He wanted to make it family friendly, and he knew that a good experience at his resort would rely upon people skiing the right runs for their skill levels. And before that, the runs weren't even marked, you know, you just needed some local knowledge. So the company decided to test different skier reactions to different geometrical figures and colors, you know, to see what they reacted to. And a circle proved to be a softer, and green was a more mellow color, and a blue square was a little more, you know, difficult, and a black diamond was the most aggressive looking shape and color combination. So the colors, the shapes, and the ranking system we know today was actually designed by Disney specifically for the ski resort that never came to be. And in 1968, the National Ski Areas Association acknowledged all the research Disney put into this and implemented this system nationwide. But even though the ski industry came to agree upon a standard trail rating system that we've all come to know and maybe love or not love, we've been completely lied to. There's still so much variation between each and every ski resort and how they decide to rank a run. Some resorts rank runs much more aggressively and others much more conservatively. And in my experience, this largely depends on the size and the geographical location of the resort. If you ski a lot, you've probably noticed this big difference between run difficulties from resort to resort. But before I tell you which ski resorts rank their runs the most reasonably, let's break down what each trail rating symbol actually means and how it's measured. The science behind ski trail rating can be simplified into a few important criteria. The first is how steep the slope is at its steepest point. Now, this can be expressed as a percentage or as a degree. I'm going to express this as a degree, because it's just how I express backcountry skiing and it makes the most sense to my brain. The other two factors for the trail rating system are if it's groomed or left in its natural state and how many hazards exist on the trail. And there's also some other random considerations depending on the resort, like width of the trail, sharpest turn, how much gets groomed, and the direction of the fall line. When it comes to grade and steepness, I want you to all keep in mind that 70 degrees is pretty much a cliff, and most of us haven't even skied on anything steeper than 55 or 60 degrees unless we're honestly jumping off a cliff. People always over-exaggerate the actual steepness of the pitch they're skiing. 70 degrees, you can't even keep an edge. It's physics. It's actually physics. So, what does each trail symbol actually mean? The green circle. These are the easiest runs on the mountain. Typically, a green circle is wide, groomed, and has a slope grade ranging from flat to 15 degrees. These are the perfect runs to learn how to link turns, learn to stop, and to start your skiing journey. At most mountains, green runs act as the main arteries and are often a good spot to warm up, go for a cruise, teach your kids to ski, or slide on down to the après. Blue squares. These are intermediate difficulty runs. These trails are generally groomed, sometimes with small bumps, but have almost no hazards. They range from 15 degrees to 23 degrees, and blue squares are the perfect spot to lay down your edges and carve. Blue squares in North America are what Europeans refer to as piste, and pistes are what cover most of European mountains because anything that isn't groomed is off-piste and backcountry in Europe for the most part. Black diamonds. Black diamonds are considered advanced terrain. These runs are anything steeper than 23 degrees, and black diamond runs usually have more character than their easier counterparts. On black diamond runs, you start to find trees, moguls, hazards, changing terrain. More stuff is just on the run. It's quite exciting, but this is where things really start to get loose. Some mountains rank runs that I would consider blues as blacks and blacks as something that should be blue. So blacks get really, really confusing. A black diamond at Whistler Blackcomb is very different than one at Mount Tremblant. The double black diamond. These are considered expert terrain only runs due to exceptionally steep slopes and an increase in marked and unmarked hazards. Most double black runs have some sort of danger, whether that be cliffs, trees, gullies, chutes, cornices, alpine winds, and they're only intended for the most experienced skiers. Once again, Whistler double black diamonds are truly double black diamonds. Runs at Whistler like the Couloir are rated as a double black diamond on the trail map, but in reality, they are much harder than most of the double black diamonds that exist on Earth. That run in particular should almost be unmarked. You also have, a double black diamond, let's say at Mount Tremblant, compared to a single black at Whistler. The single black at Whistler tends to be harder. You've got cornices, it's steeper, it's just a bigger mountain. Triple black or extreme. Some resorts will mark their extreme runs as extreme, especially in the US, and a lot of Canadian resorts won't mark the extreme runs at all. They'll keep them unmarked for the safety of the visitors because they're that intense. It's the kind of runs that if you don't know someone or you don't know where to go, you probably shouldn't even be going to try it in the first place, right? A lot of the resorts are super lenient. Unless it's permanently closed at a place like Whistler, you are allowed to ski it if you can scope a way down it, as long as you're putting no one else in danger. And that makes them unmarked and super gnarly, and there's lots of those type of runs at Whistler. In the US, I found those were to be marked as extreme. Extreme and unmarked runs are runs that have some level of death exposure. So if you fall, there is the potential that you could die. And most of the double and triple black runs at places like Whistler and some of these larger US resorts, these extreme runs are places where if you make one bad move, you could fall off a cliff, you could break a cornice, you could hit a tree, you could die. I mean, you can always die on the mountain, but these ones, have elevated risk of death. I know what you're probably thinking, the rankings are still leaving you feeling confused. And that's because they are confusing. Each and every mountain ranks mountains differently, and sometimes these rankings change over time. Smaller resorts typically want to increase the amount of expert skier visits, so they fluff the terrain rankings a little bit, add some extra blacks here or double blacks there to the terrain map to make it more interesting. And other mountains like Whistler don't add certain runs at all, just to keep people safe and reduce the risk of death for intermediates who think they actually can venture into double black terrain because they did the same thing on the East Coast. From my experience, the bigger and more aggressive mountains, typically the West Coast, will be much more difficult overall than the Eastern mountains. So the West Coast grades their runs more conservatively on aggressive terrain. So when I say that, basically anything in the West that is a blue or a black will be harder on average than anything in the East. That's just from my experience, what I've always felt. But let me know in the comments if you feel a similar thing. I think the most important thing to remember is that if you're gonna adventure into bigger terrain, especially at a different mountain, you need to look before you ride it. So do a test lap, take a look at the run you wanna ride, and make sure that it does fall within your skill level, because double black runs are no joke at some of these resorts, and you can get into big trouble if your skill level is not at the required level to ski some of these places. I'm sorry. I know you probably came to this video for some clarity on trail rankings and you're leaving just as confused as you arrived. You're welcome. It's confusing, and there really is no governing body that inspects runs to give them the perfect ranking across North America. And if you're traveling abroad, you're going to have to get used to a new set of colors. Europe sticks to circles only. Green is beginner, blue is easy, red is intermediate, black is expert, and orange is extremely difficult. Orange squares or red diamonds also sometimes mean free ride or that it's uncontrolled, and yellow circles might classify ungroomed routes that are controlled for off-piste skiing. It's confusing stuff. But hey, the unknown kind of makes things a little more fun. So do me a favor and let me know where you've seen the starkest difference in trail rankings. And once again, I'm sorry that you've been lied to. And if you're still feeling confused about ski run difficulty ratings, because I'm just as confused about it as you are. So because everything is so vastly different, the best defense is a good offense. Keep on improving so you can ski every type of run on every type of mountain. Problem solved.